Welcome to Flipped Lesson 17, and today we're going to be looking at number lines again. This time we're going to break it down and we're going to start understanding how fractions and mixed numbers work into the number line. And so as we look down at the screen, you can see that there is a very simple number line there in front of you. And the task that we have at hand is to, first of all, break it into some different increments so we can start understanding how fractions and mixed numbers work into this. So I'm going to divide each of these into four, actually I'm going to do 5 equal sections. And so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll go kind of fast. They might not be exact equal, but it will help us understand what we're doing here. And so we have these increments. They're going to help us understand how this process works. So I've taken the number line, I've divided it into sections. And now the question would be is if we were to have a number that fell on this line, how would we name that number? We understand that it's 2 right here because it's between the 2 and the 3. It's not greater than 3, so it has to be there. But what are we going to actually do? And this is the process of understanding mixed numbers and fractions. First of all, we can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces between the 2 and the 3. So we know that there is 5 possible outcomes that could come out of this type of line graph. Now we look at the line and we see that as we count the lines, we see that we've gone 1, 2, 3, and now we have our dot right there on the third line. And so as we take a look at this number line and we identify this, we would say that we are at 2 3/5. Let's try another one to help us understand exactly what we're doing here. If we were to see a line dot right here, once again we want to understand how are we going to write this number. In this case, once again, we're going to have a mixed number because we're dealing with the 4 here, and it's between 4 and 5, and so it's got to be greater than 4, but it has to be less than 5. Because our increments are the same, we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces within there. And as we look at our lines, we start at the 4, 2 to get to our dot here. So we're at 2 out of the 5 have been covered by our dot. And so our number we're looking at is 4 2/5. And so we start to understand how the number line can help us understand what's going on with how numbers are working. So how fractions and mixed numbers fit on a number line. We can take this to another degree. And you can go ahead and create a line like this just on your page and your notes, and we're going to build something together. All right, and start to understand the increments that go with these things. All right, I'm going to put a 0 here, and then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and so we have a number line here that we can continue working with and understanding. If I were to put, first of all, separate my number line into 4 equal groups at each section, I've started a process. Now the question would be, how are we going to name these? All right, if we start at 0, we go 1 out of the 4 spaces. So this would be 1/4. Now I'm here, which is technically 2 out of the 4 spaces, but we're going to reduce that, since that's a fraction, we're going to reduce that to 1/2. And then we're going to have 3/4 here. And so our increments would continue in that way as we go along our line. And just so I don't get too far behind, I'm actually going to stop at the 3, and we'll keep working through this process as we work here. As we look at this line, we definitely have an idea here that we can continue to pursue, because we could, once again, divide our number line into smaller segments here. All right, and I'm going to do it in a different color just so we can clearly see it. All right, but if I divide each of these sections into another section, we can clearly see that instead of 4 spaces, which we had with the black, we had 4 spaces with the black, like that. Now we've added the blue lines, and so we're going to count the blue lines and the black lines. And so we're going to realize that now we have 8, and so we can divide these into 8s. So this blue line here would be 1/8. 2/8 is going to be the same as 1/4, so we're going to leave it as 1/4. And then we're going to have 3/8 here. And then we would get to 4/8 here, but that is once again the same as 2/4, and so we're going to leave it as 1/2. And then this next line would be 5/8. 3/4 would be the same as 6/8. And then we would have 7/8 as our last little idea. And so we're seeing how our fractions reduce and how these things fit together. And that was way too big of an eraser to get rid of those simplifications. And so I'm going to erase those simplifications just so we're not crowding out the area. And we can continue with this area, or continue with this pattern all the way up down. So it would be 1 and 1/8, 1 and 1/4, 1 and 3/8, 1 and 1/2, 1 and 5/8, 1 and 3/4, 1 and 7/8, and so forth. Continuing on all the way up to, to the number 3. And so we're working with this, and we're starting to see how our line has continued to divide. But we're not done, right? We could divide again. And we could throw some red dashes in here, like this. And now the idea that we want to focus on is how many segments, how many sections do we have? And so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 to get all the way across from 0 to 1. And so if we were to start putting in our ideas, we'd have 1/16. 2/16 would be the same as 1/8. We'd have 3/16, which would be the same as 3/16 is the same, and then we would have 4/16, which would be the same as 1/4. And then we would have 5/16. 6/16 would be the same as 3/8. Then we could have 7/16 would squeeze its way, right? That's lining up right there. All right. 8/16 is the same as 1/2. So now we'd have 9/16, right? Mapping up that way. This one would come down and we'd have 11/16. 12/16 would be 3/4. And then we'd have 13/16. And then we'd have 15/16. All right. And on your paper, I want you to continue filling in the 16ths all the way up to the number 3. And as you look at this pattern, something should start to pop out at you. Something should pop out at you and you should say, hey, wait a minute, this number line looks pretty familiar. And if we were to take a very simple shape like this and cross it over like this. Maybe now it's popping out at you. If not, you have just created an inch ruler. And so we start to see how segments on a number line like this are used beyond just figuring out fractions, but we also use it in measurement also. So we have this connection to understanding how these things work. All right. For your sample, I want you to create a number line, and I want you to go 0 to 3 once again. And this time I want you to divide it into equal segments of 10. So there should be 10 units between each number. So I'll be looking for that line and seeing if you can answer the question of what it really looks like by the time you are done. Make sure you label the fractions as you go from line to line. So you're working with 0 to 3, and we want 10 sections or 10 segments, all right, sections, between each number. And I'll be looking for that with our sample. That is Flip Lesson 17 for the 6th grade as we start to get a better understanding of number line, fractions, and mixed numbers.